Good evening. Welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study here at our home, East Orlando Baptist Church. We're going through the book of Revelation, and we ended up on the third trumpet this evening. We studied the last trumpets last week, and we're going to begin in Revelation chapter 8, verse 10. Revelation chapter 8, verse 10. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell upon a third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. And this is a third trumpet sounded. And when this trumpet sounds, the Bible tells us that a star, a heavenly body, falls to the earth. And this object is given a name. It's called wormwood, and we are told that it is a great star. Now, the name wormwood actually appears many times in the Old Testament. In fact, 8 times. Once it's translated as hemlock in Amos chapter 6, verse 12. Now, every time you see the word wormwood in the Old Testament, it's always associated with something poisonous, something that is cursed because of poison. Now, we can hypothesize and say, well, what is this great star falling from heaven? Could it be a missile delivering some kind of agent, some kind of chemical agent in the water system? Could it be an object floating in space that scientists have not discovered yet, and it falls on the earth containing mercury and all kinds of heavy metals? We don't know, but all we know is that it looks like a falling star. It comes from heaven, and when it falls down, it falls on 1/3 of the earth's rivers, and also affects the aquifers, called fountains of water in the Bible. Just some trivia here. In the United States, 87% of our drinking water comes from the surface and from ground sources. 61% actually from rivers and lakes, and 26% from the groundwater. We have a lot of, here in Florida, and especially in this community, we all get our water from wells that are dug into the ground. So the Bible says that many will die when they drink this water, and I believe as soon as they find out it's poisonous, many will die from thirst too. So the water becomes poison. And the thing I find about when you study the book of Revelation and go through the events that are transpiring in the book of Revelation, all the things that the environmentalists are afraid of and they're harping about will actually fall on their heads during the time of tribulation. They're afraid of the water being polluted. They're afraid of the ecosystem being ruined. They're afraid of trees running out. Our forests diminishing. And all of these things shall fall upon their heads during the period of tribulation. Good evening. Grab a seat. There's plenty of seats. So that's the third trumpet. Now let's look at the fourth trumpet. Revelation chapter 8, verse 12. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So we are told that when the fourth trumpet is sounded, that 1/3 of the sun, moon, and stars will be darkened. That means they will lose their light. There will be 1/3 less light hitting the earth during the day, and 1/3 less light hitting the earth during the night. And when you read Revelation chapter 8, verse 12, you cannot but remember Matthew chapter 24, verse 29. I'm going to read that verse for you. When Christ is asked by his disciples, what are the things that will happen before his coming? He gives them a list of things. And verse 29, he tells them, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Very similar to Revelation chapter 8, verse 12. In fact, very similar to Revelation chapter 6, verse 12 and 13. And if you study the book of Joel, you'll find many times Joel talks about the moon being darkened. So the fourth trumpet, when it sounds, it brings in the darkening of the sun, moon, and stars. Now this is a milestone in the tribulation, because we can actually place when the fourth trumpet happens. And I'll show you a chart in a little bit. And we know that according to Matthew chapter 24, when you see the sun, moon, and stars being darkened, what happens afterwards? Christ comes. The second coming of Christ is soon follows the darkening of the sun, moon, and stars. So we can easily place this trumpet. I have a little chart there for you if you can see it. And I've put Revelation chapter 6 verse 12, Matthew chapter 24 verse 29, and Revelation chapter 8, 12. And we'll try to form some kind of a little bit of a timeline to place the fourth trumpet. Some of these seals in the book of Revelation are hard to place. But this one, not so much. Because we're given a lot of information in other passages in the Bible. Now, as we've said, when you study through the book of Revelation, it is not a continuous narrative. You can't begin at the beginning of the book of Revelation, and you can't follow one continuous story. We said every once in a while, God injects passages. What do we call these passages? Parenthetical passages. Those are passages that God stops the narrative, and He gives us additional information about the tribulation. And last week we studied one of those chapters. Which one was it? Chapter 7. Somebody's listening. I'm just kidding. So we studied chapter 7, and we said chapter 7 is a parenthetical chapter, because right after the end of, in fact, it begins a little bit before, because if you study Revelation chapter 6, from the first verse to the end of the verse, you're going through the entire period of the tribulation, from the beginning to the end. And as we said, there's a gap right at verse 12, Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. If you look at your little chart I have in your handout, Revelation chapter 6, verse 12 says, "And when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake." And we said between verses 12 and 13, actually somewhere halfway in verse 12, there is a gap. There is a gap. And this gap is the fourth trumpet in chapter 6. In chapter 6, because chapter 6 goes to the first six seals and then it stops. In chapter 8, we begin with the seventh seal, and also begin the trumpets. And in Revelation chapter 6, we're told, "And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood." And look at what we're told in Revelation chapter 6, verse 13. "And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind." And then when you read on, Revelation chapter 6 ends with the second coming of Christ. But we know a lot of things happen between Revelation chapter 6, verse 12, and the second coming of Christ. And let's look at Matthew chapter 24, the next column over. Christ says, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days," and things happen in between in verse 29. "And then shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light." And then in Revelation chapter 8, verse 12, what we just read, we read that the fourth trumpet is blown, and after the fourth trumpet is sounded, a third part of the sun, a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars were smitten. That means they lose their light. So it's easy to place the fourth trumpet, and we know as soon as these things happen, Christ comes back. So hopefully that helps the timeline. We have, if you look at our notes online, we have other timelines to help you place the seals and all the events going. I know in the middle of the study it might be hard to follow, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We have an open study here, so if you have anything that's bothering you or that you don't understand, just say, "Hey, I don't understand this," and I'll tell you to go. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, guys.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go
so,
ahead.
when the second coming, you're speaking of when Christ Himself is going to come, like, on earth.
At the end of the tribulation.
And I'm sure we're going to. I guess I'm confused. Is He coming in the midst of the tribulation or
No,
at the end of it?
At the end. What I'm saying is that when the fourth trumpet blasts, certain things happen.
Okay.
And when you study Matthew chapter 24, Christ tells His disciples, when the sun is darkened and when the moon shall not give her light, Christ's coming is close.
But are there going to be more trumpets after?
Yes, this is number 4.
Uh-huh.
We have 5, 6, and 7. Now the seventh trumpet we're not going to get to tonight. We'll get to it next week. When the seventh trumpet sounds, the 7 vials are poured.
Mm-hmm.
And all those vials are poured in one day.
Wow.
Because those vials coincide with the day of wrath, with the day of the Lord. And they're all poured in one day. The day of, if you study the Old Testament and you study the wrath of God, the day of the Lord, it happens in one day. And we know, now we're going to get to the fifth trumpet, and we know the fifth trumpet lasts for 5 months.
Do we have any idea in terms of, like, in the years of the tribulation, like at what point, how deep Christ will be coming in the midst of the tribulation?
What I believe is that he will come for the 144,000. He will show himself to them on Mount Zion. That's what the book of Revelation says.
Okay.
And other than that, he doesn't appear again.
Okay.
There's some people that believe in a mid-trib rapture. There's a question back.
Remember to reiterate the question.
That's right. So the question was, what was your question again?
Question was like,
Just for the audience.
yes. Do we know at what point, like how many years into the tribulation, the second coming? Like, do we know an approximate timeline of this fourth trumpet that we're saying the second coming?
Roughly. We don't know exactly,
Not
we know roughly. My guess would probably be less than a year.
Wow. Okay.
From the fourth trumpet to the second coming is probably less than a year. Why? Because the fourth trumpet happens quickly, and whatever happens on the fourth trumpet lasts until the end. So when the sun, moon, and stars are darkened, they don't get darkened for a day. They get darkened, and they stay dark until Christ comes back. And then the fifth trumpet, which we're going to look at now, lasts for 5 months.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to look at that now. Yes, sir. Question.
Within those 5 months, do we get the remaining up to the seventh trumpet, or does that last longer?
That trumpet only lasts for 5 months. We're going to look at it now.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, okay, Christ comes during that time.
Yes.
Then we have other trumpets. We have
Well,
the seventh trumpet.
Okay, but Christ comes after the seventh trumpet.
Oh, okay,
But
during
not during, but the fourth trumpet.
within the darkness
Yes, within the darkness though. But the darkness continues
for the seventh trumpet.
until the seventh trumpet. Yes.
Got it.
Good question. Good question. So the question is, does Christ come? Within the darkness, does he come? But when does Christ actually come? Well, that once the darkness happens, it'll last until Christ comes back.
So this will be the time of suffering.
Yeah, well, big suffering. You're going to see what's going to happen next. Fifth trumpet. Well, yes.
So the 70th week of Daniel must be done before Christ returns.
The days will be shortened. Christ says, unless those days were shortened.
No man will be
So
saved.
the period, God has allocated 7 years.
Right.
7 prophetic years. We studied that in a previous lesson. He's allocated 7 prophetic years. But Christ says he's going to come back before those days are expired, because then nobody would be left alive. For the elect's sake, he will come back. Unless those days were shortened.
And it's not the 75 days mentioned in Daniel,
No.
right?
No.
We're talking about
7
really
years.
shortening the days.
We don't know how long. It's going to be a shortening, but we don't know if it's going to be 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, 30 days. We don't know. Now Daniel gives us 1,335 days. He gives us another timeline,
126.
but nobody has a real grasp of what those timelines mean. Yes, Nathaniel.
So when Christ comes back, are the sun and stars going to stop being darkened?
Well, he's going to light up the sky. When Christ comes back, the question was, when Christ comes back, is the sun, moon, and stars going to lose or regain their light? No, Christ is going to be that light when he comes back. He's going to shine like a flash of lightning in the sky. And I think partly the reason why the God makes it dark, so they can see Christ better. So let's go to chapter 8, verse 13. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound. These are the 3 woes correspond with the last 3 trumpets. So trumpet number 5 is the first woe, trumpet number 6 is the second woe, and trumpet number 7 is the third woe. Sam Jones used to say, when God says woe, you'd better stop. Yes, Nathaniel.
Is it verse 13 or 15?
Verse 13.
Is it 15?
Okay, verse 13. Glad somebody's paying attention. Now, I want to digress a little bit and point out what other Bibles say regarding verse 13. I want to read to you from the ESV. And it says, Then I looked and I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, at the blast of the other trumpets that the 3 angels are about to blow. Now, why do they change it from angel to eagle? Oh, they say the words are spelled very similarly in Greek, but that's not the case. A very different spelling between an angel in Greek and eagle in Greek. The reason is that they used a corrupt Greek text, and they And if you think about it, would it make sense for an eagle to cry with a loud voice and speaking? Or would it make sense for an angel to speak and cry with a loud voice? Because throughout the book of Revelation, we see angels actually speaking to the people. In fact, in Revelation chapter 14, there's an angel and he preaches the everlasting gospel. Talk about contradicting Galatians chapter 4. So if you have any common sense, you know that this doesn't make sense. Why they would do that? Because they used a corrupt Greek text. I just wanted to make a plug there for this issue, because that's an issue in other translations. So that's the 8 chapter 13. Now we get into the fifth trumpet. Now we begin Revelation chapter 9. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star falling from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And we know from studying the book of Revelation, 144,000 men have the seal of God on their forehead. And these are Jewish evangelists. They're not Jehovah's Witnesses. Verse 9, and to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months. And that there's the 5 months that we talked about, the fifth trumpet. When it sounds, it will last for 5 months, because this trumpet brings these locusts that will torment men. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the... we just read that, right? Verse 5. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months, and the torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of these locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. Have you ever seen a battle horse full of armor? Battle horses have full of armor. And on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men, and the hair as the hair of women, and the teeth as the teeth of lions. Could you imagine the locust looking like that? I will get into other interpretations, but I believe it literally. And they had breastplates, verse 9, as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. Some people say this is the sound of a helicopter. Verse 10, and they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, and this is the clincher, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue his name Apollyon. 1 woe is past, and behold, there cometh 2 woes more hereafter. You had a question already, Justin?
What you repeat, it went in the fifth trumpet, it went verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, verse 4, verse 5, and then verse 4, and then verse 5 again. Okay,
we'll fix it later if we messed it up. I see that. I repeated myself, right? Cut and pasted too many times.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I was a child, like, I used to draw pictures of, like, that creature being described, like, in my doodles and stuff.
I did too.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one.
So, like, it's not super important or dogmatic, but is there like a divide, and like, do we think it's something literal, or is it like metaphorical to some type of military weapon, or?
We're going to get into that. My interpretation, how I interpret it, I believe it's literal.
Literal.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
We'll get into that. So now we know from the text that this plague brings about 5 months of suffering, 5 months of torment. Aside from the second coming, this is the most terrifying event that occurs during the tribulation. We are told again that another star falls from heaven. But this time, this is the key though. This star is called a hymn. We therefore know that this star is an angel. You look at our notes in lesson chapter 17. We go through, we talk a little bit about angels. And this star is given a key to the bottomless pit. So a lot of people say, how can this pit be located in the center of the earth and be a bottomless pit? Have you ever thought of that? Have you ever wondered? Isaiah 14, chapter 14, verse 15 gives us a clue. It says, "Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit." This is the prophecy that God gives Lucifer when he fell, that one day he will be cast into this bottomless pit. And Lucifer, Satan, is cast in this bottomless pit during the 1,000-year reign of Christ. That's where he's held for 1,000 years. And this bottomless pit is not a teenager. Okay. Now, the way I visualize a bottomless pit is, imagine the shape of a torus. Some of you may say, I have no idea what a torus is. Well, you know what a donut looks like, right? Now, those in the bottomless pit, Mike's laughing. We're not going to get into that, but maybe later you'll find out. I'm going to say a joke and you'll find out why. There's a guy who committed a crime and he wanted to give himself up and he couldn't find any police officers. So he ran over to the closest donut shop. That's a joke. So, now, imagine a hollow donut or a torus, and you're in the center of that thing. It has sides. If you're falling continuously, it has no bottom. A satellite, when it travels around the Earth, because of centripetal force, it's actually falling. But every time it falls, it doesn't fall because the Earth is curved. That's how centripetal force, if you've done any engineering or any physics, that's how centripetal force works. People are shaking their heads. I'll explain it to you. Yes, Nathan, you have a question.
So there can't be gravity in this pit, or once you get to the bottom of the circle.
That's what the gravity is. So the way satellites orbit is they have linear momentum. They're going straight and they're falling. So imagine little triangles. They go straight, and these triangles are really small, but that's how the forces work. It goes across and it falls. It goes across and it falls. It goes across and it falls. So when you add these little triangles, you get little tiny arcs. But it's happening continuously. So that's why satellites are falling, but they never fall because the Earth is round. So those, for the flat earthers, if the Earth was flat, we'd have satellites raining over our heads. Because of the Earth's curvature, the satellites keep falling and they follow the Earth's curvature. So if somebody's in the hollow of the Earth, in this bottomless pit, and they're continuously falling because of gravity, because of the Earth's rotation, they're never going to reach the bottom. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So they're falling continuously in this pit. And that's why the Bible says this pit has no bottom, bottomless pit. But we know the pit is in the center of the earth because this angel, when he opens this bottomless pit, where do these creatures come out of? They come out of from the pit that's in the earth.
Excuse me, I
Yes.
just had a question
Go ahead.
Concerning the prophecy of Isaiah. Is he saying in essence that hell is located within the center of earth, or this is just a metaphor?
No, it's hell is located in the center of the earth.
The
No,
actual
The
hell?
actual hell, yes. Now you look at science, and they'll tell you that the earth has an iron core and has magma. They don't know. It's all hypothesis. It's based on the iron core is based on the Earth's magnetic field. So they find an element that closely resembles what element would give us this magnetic field of the Earth. They don't know. When you see the pictures in science books about the Earth cut out and the magma and the hot, that's just a scientist's hypothesis. They don't know. We cannot drill but a couple of miles in the Earth's surface.
8 miles the most.
8 miles,
That was
yeah.
it.
We can't drill any deeper. They don't know.
Okay, so basically at the end of times when people will be cast into hell, we know for sure that it's in the center of the earth?
At the end of time, after the millennial kingdom, they will be, everybody from hell will be taken out of hell, will be cast into a lake of fire.
Okay,
We don't know where this lake of fire is.
okay, so the hell where people are
Right now.
before the millennium is in the center of the
Yes,
earth?
yes.
Okay.
It's in the center of the earth. You take it literally. Now, science, just recently science came out. I think Mike sent me a link of an article that they, through DNA studies, through genetic studies, they say everyone is descended from one man and one woman. So science is always catching up to the Bible.
Yeah.
You don't listen to the textbooks. They found soft tissue. I love this one. Soft tissue in T-Rex, and they hid it for 10 years because they couldn't explain how in the world could they find blood cells in T-Rex bone if T-Rex should have become extinct millions of years ago. Yeah. They found keratin cells in Triceratops. The evidence is there. The scientists, they don't like the evidence because it would mean they would have to reject the theory of evolution.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I mean, we don't have to dwell too long on it because I mean, if the Bible says it, I believe it anyway. But just I'm trying to visualize it at least. So if hell is described to be at the center of the earth or in the earth, Abraham's bosom would also then be not too far from there, or at least in the same place.
Yeah.
So it's just hard for me to imagine, like, if we're talking, if it is that kind of shape, that torus, I don't know. I'm trying to picture them together. Just weird.
Yeah. Bottomless pit. So you have to picture yet another compartment within that torus.
Within that. Yeah.
So you can use your imagination, but God just gives us enough information to make us wonder. I think He does that sometimes. Nathaniel, you had a question?
Maybe you're in the Torah, so maybe Abraham's bosom is in the center.
Maybe it's in the center, and there's a gulf. Abraham says there's a gulf fixed between us. There's a gap between us. So we don't know exactly what there is, but we do know that hell is in the center of the earth because when Christ repeats something more than twice, when something is repeated more than twice in the Bible, you take it literally. Creation happened in 6 days, in 6 24-hour days, because it's repeated twice in the Bible. This is called the law of second mention. We studied that in the book when we were going through the book of Genesis, the law of second mention. So let's not digress too much. So this angel, we will get to his identity in a while. This angel opens the bottomless pit and looses these hideous creatures. And these are one of the reasons why I believe this is supernatural, because it's an angel and he's given a key and he opens the bottomless pit. And the Bible says when he opens the bottomless pit, smoke ascends out of the pit and supernatural locusts come out of the pit. We know these are not regular locusts because smoke stifles locusts, and these locusts avoid plants. What is the first thing a locust does? Grass. Eats grass. Everything green.
Isn't the grass all gone?
A third, right? It's a third of the trees.
A third of the trees.
There's still
all
trees
the
left.
grass.
Yeah, the greenery. So locusts do not avoid greenery. They just go wherever there's green. And regular locusts have no king. Proverbs 30:27 says, "The locusts have no king, yet they go forth, all of them, by bands." The Bible is indeed a science book. This is the best illustration I found online that depicts what Revelation says. It's in your charts. Hideous creatures. This is the best depiction I found. Tail like a scorpion, a face like a man, a crown of gold, hair like a woman. They have breastplates, they are like horses prepared unto battle. What else does the Bible tell? These are nightmarish creatures. Nightmarish creatures. Now, some have suggested that this is actually a helicopter and not a locust, because John had never seen a helicopter, and John tries to describe a helicopter. But why would he use a locust instead of a horse or some other animal known to him? Think about that. He says breastplates. Look at this picture of a helicopter I have here in your handout. John says a tail like a scorpion. Some suggested that's the rotor, the tail rotor of a helicopter. And you know why helicopters have a tail rotor? To counteract the momentum of the rotors in the helicopter. Crown like a gold. Faces like men. They say John was looking at through windows of a helicopter and he saw the pilots and he saw men in there. And teeth like lions. A lot of pilots, they paint teeth on their airplanes, on their helicopters. Breastplates. A helicopter is basically a flying tank. Wings making the noise of horse chariots running to battle. That sounds like a rotor of a helicopter. But I'm here to tell you that this interpretation fails mainly in two areas. These locusts come out of the bottomless pit. 1. And 2, they are demonic. And the king is an angel over the bottomless pit, and his name is Abaddon. And these creatures are given permission by God to torment men for 5 months. A helicopter doesn't need permission by God to torment men, but a demon A devil, a wicked spirit, needs permission by God to attack a man. Read Job chapter 1 and Job chapter 2. Unless God gives permission to the devil couldn't touch Job. That's how it is. The evil spirits are given permission by God to attack men.
They don't have long hair.
And they don't have long hair, right?
Is Abaddon the devil or a devil?
A devil. We'll
A
get to that in a little bit. But first I want to digress here and talk about the number 5. We're told, how long will these creatures torment men? 5 months. 5 is a number of death in the Bible. It was the 5th cherub who fell, and he has the power of death. Hebrews 2:14. Genesis 5:5 records the death of the first man. You know the Bible is a supernatural book. Look at Benjamin. Look at his life. When Benjamin was born, his mother died. And when Joseph sees Benjamin for the first time, remember we were studying through the book of Genesis, and what do you find out? When Jacob was in Shechem, Joseph was sold into slavery. But Benjamin was not born while Jacob was in Shechem. Benjamin was born much later when Jacob traveled from Shechem down to Bethel, then down to Hebron where his father was, to Mamre where his father was. So Benjamin was born afterwards. So when Joseph sees his brother, he gives him 5 times as much as the other brothers. Is that a coincidence? Christ died in the earth's 5th day. God has allocated 7 days for the earth. In Acts chapter 5, verse 5, the 5th book of the New Testament, Ananias dies after being asked 5 questions about his sin. And when the 5th seal was opened, John sees under the altar the souls of them that were slain. Asahel, Abner, Ishbosheth, Amasa, they were all slain when they were struck in the 5th rib. There are 6 people who were stoned to death in the Old Testament, but 5 of them are given a name. One of them is not. Achan, Hadaran, Naboth, Zechariah, and Stephen, they were all stoned to death, 5 of them. But the 6th man we've not given his name. Is that a coincidence? 5 in the Bible is the number of death. So when these demonic entities sting men, they will inflict tremendous pain, so much so that those who get stung will want to die. Now again, I don't believe these are helicopters or drones, because they have a king, and the king is an angel, and his name is Abaddon, and his name in Greek is Apollyon. This guy here is definitely a high-ranking demon. A very high-ranking demon. Now here I have a little picture of a drone. It could be, some people said that maybe these are mini drones. Could it be possible that these demons possess drones? I don't know. But I think this is literal, that these creatures come from the pit, bottomless pit. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on the bottomless pit. Yes, Nathaniel, what was your question?
Do you have any clues as to how big these things are?
Locusts. They're the size of locusts.
That big?
Locusts are actually quite big.
I know.
Someone says, do we have any idea how big these things are that come out of the bottomless pit? A locust is what? About this big? 4 or 5 inches? About 4 inches?
3 or 4 inches.
Yeah, 3 or 4 inches.
The people on the earth will be able to see them, right?
Oh yeah, you can see a locust when it lands on you.
However, I believe in the Middle East, some of them could get much bigger
Yes.
during their height.
He's right. In the Middle East, the locusts are much bigger, so we have to take that into account, because the Bible is written from the perspective of the Middle East, and it's a Jewish book, predominantly a Jewish book. And yes, you're right. The locusts in the Middle East can get quite big. It can even reach 6 inches long. It's a pretty big insect. So imagine seeing a thing 6 inches long buzzing around, coming at you, and you actually see the face of a man on that thing. And the Bible tells us that the devil is called Lord of the Flies. Keep that in mind, Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies. Somebody had a question? No? Okay, if you have a question, I can't see your hand, so you have to speak up. Okay. So now I want to take a pause here. I want to teach a little bit on these demons. And the devil hates it when you teach on demonic things. He hates it. He hates being exposed. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. I want to read this verse. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I want to point out the word principalities. You see that in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12? What's a principality? A principality is a state, a region that is ruled by a prince. The countries of this earth have designated demons, devils over them. In Daniel chapter 10, we were given a glimpse of what goes on in the heavenly places. The angel Gabriel, we're not told in chapter 10 if it was Gabriel, but all the other times that an angel spoke to Daniel, it was Gabriel, so we can assume it was probably Gabriel who was speaking to Daniel, and he told him, I was delayed in coming to you because I had to fight with the prince of Persia. He was prevented. Someone stood in his way. This angel is telling Daniel that the prince of Persia withstood me. When God gave me the answer to come to you, Daniel, this demon, this angel, stopped me.
When he's talking about the Prince of Persia, is he talking about the actual king or the demon over
The demon over Persia. How do we know that? Because of what goes on. And let's read it. Good question. How do we know if Daniel is talking about the demon or the actual physical ruler of Persia? In Daniel chapter 10, verse 13, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me. Now, who is speaking to Daniel? First thing, it's an angel, right? So an angel is talking to Daniel. So how can a physical king withstand a spiritual angel? Very improbable. 1 in 20 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. And Gabriel's saying that this king of Persia, prince of Persia, he withstood me, he was preventing me, he was stopping me. And Michael, which is one of the chief princes, helped me. Now, who is Michael in the Bible? The archangel. So the fact that Gabriel is telling us that Michael is one of the chief princes tells us there is more than one archangel. But Michael the archangel has the task of watching over the people of Israel. That's his task. And then he said, when Michael came, he helped me, and I was able to defeat this prince of Persia. And look what he says in verse 20 of Daniel chapter 10. Then said he, knowest thou wherefore I came unto thee? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia, and when I am gone forth, lo, the prince of Greece shall come. So Gabriel is telling Daniel, my fight with the prince of Persia is not over. Once I'm done with you, I got to go back and battle this guy some more. And after I'm done with this guy, another one's going to come. Another high-ranking demon is going to come, and he's the prince of Greece. And I have to battle with him too. So you'll see that it gives us a glimpse of what's going on. There's wars happening in the heavenly places that we are not aware of. Angels and demons fighting over control over the nations of the world. And I think America is losing the fight. You see what's going on in our culture today. We're losing. Now I want to spend some time. Any questions so far?
When Satan wanted to become like the Most High, and God cast him out of the third heaven, he occupied the second heaven, and this is his dominion. That's why he has these.
But he still has access to the throne of God. Yes, he lost his position. The fall of Lucifer is threefold.
Right.
He fell from being the anointed cherub. He lost his position. The second fall is going to be when he comes down to the earth. He's no longer going to be allowed in the heavenlies. He's going to actually physically fall on the earth. Book of Revelation teaches that. And the last fall is when he's cast into the lake of fire. So the threefold fall of Lucifer and his angels. Oh, any other questions? Okay, so now I want to spend some time on this bottomless pit. The Bible tells us that Abaddon is the king over the bottomless pit. He was given that authority when God cast him out in verse 1. He is only given the key to open the pit, and then the key is taken away from him. You've got to keep that in mind. This demon, this high-ranking angel, fallen angel, is given a key. And we're told in Revelation chapter 20, verse 1, that another angel coming from heaven, and now he has the key of the bottomless pit. So that tells me that this angel, this fallen angel, Abaddon, he is given the key for a time, only to open the bottomless pit. And when he opens the bottomless pit, the Bible doesn't tell us, but we can infer because of what Revelation chapter 20 verse 1 tells us, that he gives the key back after he opens the bottomless pit. And this tells us that God works with the wickedness in high places to accomplish his goals. Now, before you get bent out of shape, you've got to study Job chapter 1 and Job chapter 2. God works with these evil spirits, allowing them to do certain things so that God in the end can accomplish his will. We may not like that as human beings, but that's fact.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So when you're referencing Job 1 and 2, so you're referencing the sons of God coming into the courts.
Right.
And those being, okay.
And Satan asking God for permission,
Mm-hmm.
because Satan told God, I can't touch Job.
Mm.
Why couldn't Satan touch Job?
Because, okay.
Do you know, I'm asking,
I just figured God wouldn't give him permission without his
the Bible says, Satan tells us that,
You have surrounded him.
yes, that's right. You have put
Hedge
a
of
hedge
protection.
around him.
Around.
That's right. So God had put a hedge around Job, spiritual hedge, so Satan couldn't touch Job. Satan tried, but he couldn't, because he couldn't penetrate that spiritual force that God put around Job. And so Satan goes to God and says, I can't touch this guy.
So if Abaddon would be like a high-ranking demon coming from the bottomless pit,
Well, he doesn't come from the bottomless pit. He comes from heaven.
okay,
He's given a key.
okay,
He goes to the bottomless pit and he opens it. And we're getting into the bottomless pit now.
okay.
Do you have another question?
Well, because what I was thinking was, I can't remember if it's in First or Second Peter, but or mentions
We're getting there.
Second Peter. Okay, I won't ask
You
that.
read, you read, no, I'm just kidding.
And Jude.
Go ahead, Nathaniel. You had a question?
So does the devil need God's permission to attack people that aren't saved?
No. He has them. They're his children. Remember what Christ told the Pharisees? Ye are of your father the devil.
Yeah.
Right? He needs permission to touch God's children. And that's why it's so important as Christians that we live holy lives. Because if we don't live a holy life, then we give Satan the opportunity to attack us. And that's why, yeah, go ahead.
In the sense that we lose that edge of protection?
Yes. Because sin, we allow sin in our lives.
Okay.
And then we lose God's protection. You've got to submit to God. And once you submit to God, then resist the devil. That's right. People always say, resist the devil and he shall flee. They always forget that first part. That's right. That's good. It says submit unto God. They forget that part. I'm a Christian. God's going to protect me. Well, you got to submit to God in order to also avail yourself of his protection.
Yeah.
And that's why living a holy life is so important. That's why we will teach on holiness, but we have to be careful that we don't become legalists. You know the difference between holiness and legalism. Legalism is you don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Holiness is you do it because you want to. Because God's presence is real in your life. And you realize what God has done for you. And you want to thank God. And because you want to thank God, you want to live a holy life because you know it pleases Him. Not because so you can go around saying I'm better than you because I don't watch this or I don't say that or I don't go here or I don't go there. There's a fine line between holiness and legalism. So it seems that when you put all the verses together, and we're going to look at some other verses, that the bottomless pit is a holding place, a holding area for certain demons. Because during the millennial kingdom, the 1,000-year reign of Christ, Satan is placed into this bottomless pit. Revelation chapter 2, verse 20. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, in verse 3, and cast him where? Into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed for a season. So now, Abaddon. When you study the word Abaddon, you find it in the Hebrew Old Testament 6 times. It has been translated destruction. And every single time, and often, most often, it occurs in tandem with the words death and hell. So I'm going to give you some verses here. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 11. You see that? Hell and destruction. That word destruction has been translated from the Hebrew word Abaddon, which does mean destruction, by the way, are before the Lord. How much more than the hearts of the children of men? Job chapter 26, verse 6. Hell is naked before him, and destruction, that's abandoned, hath no covering. So you're led to believe that there's two places. One place is hell, and the other place is destruction. Proverbs 27, verse 20. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. So likely the bottomless pit is a compartment near or next to hell that God keeps certain undesirable demons. I'll give you a few more verses. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell. You see that word hell there? That word hell is translated from a Greek word that indicates a different compartment in hell. It's a different Greek word used in this verse that's translated hell than anywhere else. That gives you an idea. Peter used Greek mythology to demonstrate that this is in hell, but it's a different compartment in hell. That's the Greek word he used. And he says these angels are tied in chains of darkness, and they are reserved unto judgment. And if you go to Jude chapter 1, verse 6, and the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Again, the bottomless pit is likely the deep that we read of Luke chapter 8. A very interesting exchange is happening between the Lord Jesus Christ and certain devils. In Luke chapter 8, verse 30, and Jesus asked him, Jesus was casting out a demon, and he says, what is your name? And he said, Legion, because many devils were entered into him. And they besought him that he would not command them to go out into the, what? Into the deep. So the deep is probably this bottomless pit that we read of in the Bible. Now, could these angels that are reserved until the judgment of God, could it be the judgment of God is referring to the period of tribulation? Could it be that God has reserved these angels and cast them and chained them until this day that we read about in Revelation, when the fifth trumpet sounds and the Abaddon opens the bottomless pit, and these angels that are reserved for judgment are now released? Could it be? Could it, these malevolent spirits, as they're coming out of the bottomless pit, could they morph into locusts, into these hideous creatures when they come on earth? We know that according to Scripture, certain classes of angels, certain classes of angelic beings, they look like animals. Look at the seraphim. Look at the cherubim. They're in the shape of an animal. They've got wings. They've got a face of an ox, a face of a man. They got the face of an eagle. They look like animals at first when you see them. But I can tell you, when these creatures show up, people will be terrified. It will be a horror show, a reality. It will be a reality horror TV production. That's the way I can put it. And the fifth seal is the first woe. It's the most gruesome seal, the most gruesome plague that God will pour upon the earth. It's 5 months, these creatures flying around, stinging men and women, and causing them extreme torment. Question?
At the end it says the fifth seal is the first woe, but I thought it was the fifth trumpet.
Yes. I'm not infallible. I'd like to be. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. That was a joke. Good, we'll fix that. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is it an actual chain that we're led to believe that God will keep Satan in the bottomless pit, or the power of God himself?
I think it's something spiritual, a spiritual chain. I don't think it's a physical chain.
So I would assume that it would be the power of God.
Yes. Yeah. Something that he ties him with, that God is in there, that's keeping him tied in that place. Like the bottomless pit, I don't think it's an actual key that this angel slips into a door, and he opens the door, and these things just fly out of the door, like the bats in an attic when you open the attic and all these bats come flying down. But there is some spiritual sense. God gives us physical things to help us understand the spiritual things.
Okay, and one more. I thought that the way that Christ died was a failure for the devil himself.
Yes.
I thought that that might have been one of his fault.
Yes.
One of the devil's faults.
He lost
You
the
said that there were three.
threefold fall, right? But on the cross when Christ died, the devil lost the authority over the kings of the earth. He lost that authority. He lost something. He didn't fall. He's still in the same. He's still on earth.
So he failed in his attempt to capture mankind,
Well,
so to speak.
He thought by killing Christ he was winning, but once he realized what happened on the cross, it was too late. Basically, checkmate.
So basically, he failed forever.
Yeah. Well, he failed the first time. Yeah.
Yeah,
From the beginning, but.
for 1/3 at least.
Yeah. So, any other questions? Let me just say goodbye to the people on the internet. We'll see you guys next week. We'll continue with our second and third woe next week.